Maya Angelou had famously described this: when people show who they truly are, believe them the first time. If the American people, especially the white people, along with the new media and the political elite, had heeded that wisdom, perhaps our country would not now be teetering on the edge of a fascist abyss. The contemporary Republican Party has become the world's largest white supremacist organization, and now also exclusively it supports the use of political violence and terrorism to advance the goal of ending multiracial democracy. Donald Trump's coup attempt culminated in the Klan attack on the Capitol of January 6, 2021, was the literal embodiment of those values, beliefs, and goals. The foundational premise for this Trump coup attempt and the big lie about the 2020 election that fueled it was that the votes of black and brown people essentially do not count, or at least they should not have equal weight with votes of the white people, especially white conservatives in the former slave-owning Confederacy and other parts of the red state America. White supremacy is violence. White supremacist violence is personal, structural, and institutional. It is through violence and the threat of violence in a society organized around maintaining the white privilege across all areas of life is created, maintained, expanded, protected, and enforced. Now, those who fail to understand what happened on January 6th as an act of white supremacist violence effectively deny the reality of what happened that day, along with its genesis, meaning, and long-term implications. Um, for today's Republican Party, and the conservative movement, the racist dog whistles or coded appeals that were required by the Southern strategy of the 60s, 70s, and 80s are now almost totally obsolete. Um, those things belong to an earlier moment when white supremacy had to be cloaked in plausible deniability because the majority of society increasingly viewed it as shameful. As the 2022 midterms heat up, and then the 2024 presidential election draw closer, the Republican Party and the larger white right will both literally and figuratively drop their masks. They have showed us who they really are, and we should fucking believe them. Um, Now, during a speech at a Trump Klan rally in Illinois 2 Saturdays ago, Representative Mary Miller, a Republican who represents a district in rural southeastern Illinois, spoke in celebration of the Supreme Court's recent decision to overturn Roe v. Wade. Now, as a woman, you should be fucking embarrassed to be a Republican. Um, Now, for former squatter Trump, on behalf of all the maggot patriots in America, she said, she claims that it's a historic victory for the white life in the Supreme Court yesterday. No, it really wasn't. That statement did not appear to be a gaffe or an error. Miller was reading from a prepared text and did not pause, attempt to correct herself, or look embarrassed in any way. Subsequently, her campaign has claimed that she intended to say the right to life. Such a defense lacks any credibility. Now, for one thing, Miller's remark about the white life fits into a larger pattern. Consider what she said at the Klan rally on the Capitol Hill in January of 2021. This is what she had said back then. Each generation has the responsibility to teach and train the next generation. You know, if we win a few elections, we're still going to be losing unless we win the hearts and minds of our children. And this is the battle. Hitler was right on one thing, he said. Whoever has the youth has the future. Now, Hitler was never right on anything, so... Now, Miller belongs to the large majority of Republicans in Congress who voted to reject electoral votes from states that Joe Biden had won in the immediate aftermath of the Capitol Klan attack. Now, last Tuesday, to no one's surprise, she was renominated by Republican voters in her district in the Illinois primaries. Now, claims about the need to protect white life by banning abortion are a key element of the racist Great Replacement conspiracy theory. Now, within that worldview, white life is uniquely sacred, and white women play a special role in saving or protecting the future of the white race. Now, which is locked in an existential struggle against black and brown invaders who are trying to conquer or destroy the majority Christian nations or Western civilization as a whole. Now, these toxic fictions have now been entered, and it's entered into the political mainstream. Public opinion polls show that more than half of Trump voters and Republicans believe in the central claims of the Great Replacement theory. Last week in Illinois, no one booed Mary Miller's reference to the white life. There was no moment of uncomfortable silence or awkwardness. The crowd cheered it up and ate it up. Donald Trump certainly did not look uncomfortable. He looked on approvingly as Mary Miller spoke glowingly of the importance of white life. While Trump typically speaks in mere coded terms, He's repeatedly shown himself to be a white supremacist who traffics in the race war fantasies, white victimology, and both explicit and implicit calls for violence to protect real America, meaning the white people who support him, which they're inbred anyway, so they don't need any protection, from those who are un-American and dangerous, a category that includes nearly all black and brown Americans, as well as Democrats and progressives, the feminists, and the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender community. Now consider the tone of the recent fundraising emails from Trump's PAC, and here is one. Now is our time. It is time to step up and stand up to the squatter Trump. If we don't, the corrupt radical Democrats will destroy our beloved country. Technically, Trump, that's what you did. You destroyed our country. We must discredit, expose, and defeat their toxic plans. Yeah, Trump, we already did that to you. It is crucial that the patriots from across the country work together to help the former squatter Trump save America. Trump destroyed America. He did not save it. And here's another. The radical Democrats would do anything to line their pockets and destroy our great country. Trump, that's what you did. They attacked our values. Trump, that's also what you did. Destroyed our economy. Trump, you also did that. Put America last. Trump, you also did that. They called us racist and deplorable. Cause Trump, you are racist and deplorable. Yes, Trump, what you did is disgusting. He claims that Democrats won't stop until America's unrecognizable. That's what Trump did. That same weekend, also in response to the Supreme Court's ruling overturning Roe v. Wade, Senator John Cornyn of Texas posted a now infamous tweet, "Now do Plessy v. Ferguson," and Brown v. Board of Education. Officially, according to his own explanation, Cornyn was criticizing those who argued that the long-standing Supreme Court decision should not be overturned. Thank goodness some SCOTUS precedents are overruled. He subsequently tweeted that after his first statement was met with public outrage. In reality, Cornyn was clearly suggesting that black Americans should once again become second-class citizens by reinstating the Jim Crow white supremacist terror regime that was epitomized by the Plessy v. Ferguson decision. It was a regime under which tens of thousands of black Americans were murdered by the white people in race riots, pogroms, lynchings, and other targeted killings from the end of the Civil War all the way up to the Civil Rights Movement more than 100 years later. Now, whatever Cornyn's expressed intention, the evidence is clear. The Republican Party supports and advocates for and enables policies and outcomes that are designed to maintain the dominance and control of the white people all over areas of American society. Now, furthermore, it endorses and uses violence to achieve its goals, as public opinion polls made clear, and the Klan attack capital of January 6th so vividly illustrates. Now, in fact, the end of Roe v. Wade and the assault on women's reproductive rights and freedoms is the result of a decades-long pressure campaign that has used intimidation, arson, bombings, physical assault, and even murder to achieve its goals. Now, Kathy Spiller summarizes this at the Miss magazine. Now, for nearly 50 years, as anti-abortion legislators in states around the country have chipped away at the constitutional right to a safe and legal abortion, they have done so with the steady drumbeat of violence at their back. Now, though violence and threats of violence directed against abortion providers have been a prominent aspect of abortion in the United States since Roe was decided, anti-abortion legislators would likely ignore this part of history. Now, instead, they try to frame the history of the post-Roe abortion as a hard issue and one of mere controversy that should be settled by the same state legislators. But decades of violence make clear that the debate over abortion in America isn't a matter of some civil disagreement. It is the subject of unrelenting attacks by those who have no regard for the rule of law. In the decision expected within the next few months, if the Supreme Court overturns or severely guts Roe v. Wade, it will send an unmistakable and dangerous message that the violence against abortion providers has worked. Now, Spiller was writing before the Dobbs decision. It's predicted that the decision overturning Roe would send an unmistakable and dangerous message that the violence against abortion providers has worked. It also suggests that the decision will further embolden extremists to engage in violence in their crusade to end abortion in the United States. After all, Extremist violence has not been confined to those jurisdictions that would be expected to curtail abortion rights if Roe was overturned. Now, 6 of the murders committed by anti-abortion extremists occurred in jurisdictions that would likely preserve access to abortion: Colorado, Massachusetts, and New York. If anti-abortion sentiments are unable to sway legislators in some states to ban abortion outright, there are very few reasons to be concerned that extremists who for decades have disregarded the rule of law and the legitimate political process will take matters into their own hands. It's documented by historian Nancy McLean in her book Democracy in Chains that the leaders of today's conservative movement have utter disdain for democracy, the Constitution, the human rights, the human freedom, the common good, and the rule of law. The anti-democracy movement also wants to impose a type of Christian fascist regime on the American people, and I'm a fucking atheist, so this would not work for me. Now, in a recent essay for Sheer Post and Salon, Chris Hedges argues that the Christian fascists are clear about the society that they intend to create. And this is their idea. In their ideal America, our secular humanist society based on science and reason will be destroyed. The Ten Commandments will form the basis of the legal system. Creationism or intelligent design will be taught in public schools, many of which will be overtly Christian. Those branded as social deviants, including the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender community, the immigrants, secular humanists, feminists, Jews, Muslims, criminals, and those dismissed as nominal Christians, meaning Christians who do not embrace this particular interpretation of the Bible, will be silenced, imprisoned, or killed. The role of the federal government will be reduced to protecting the property rights, the homeland security, and waging war. Most government assistance programs and federal departments, including education, will be terminated. Church organizations will be funded and empowered to run the social welfare agencies and schools. The poor, condemned for sloth, indolence, and sinfulness, will be denied help. The death penalty will be expanded to include moral criminals, including apostasy, blasphemy, sodomy, and witchcraft, as well as abortion, which will be treated as murder. Women denied contraception, access to abortion, and equality under the law will be subordinate to men. Those who practice other faiths will become at best second-class citizens. The wars waged by the American Empire will be defined as religious crusades. Victims of police violence and those in prison will have no redress. There will be no separation of church and state. The only legitimate voices in public discourse and the media will be Christian. America will be secularized as an agent of God, as an invisible ferryman in the sky, basically. But those who defy the Christian authorities at home and abroad will be condemned as agents of Satan. Now, really, Republicans, is this the fucking kind of America that you really fucking want? Because I don't. I'm not a Republican or a Democrat, and this is not what I want to see. Now, today's conservative movement is now in revolutionary mode, determined to destroy the expansion of freedom, human rights, and democracy that took place from Reconstruction through the New Deal, the Civil Rights Movement, the Feminist Revolution, the Gay Pride Movement, and the other progressive movements throughout the 20th and early 21st centuries. Now, at its core, fascism is always revanchist and seeks to impose an old order, which is often imaginary or invented on a new world. The new world order for today's Republican fascists goes back at least to the 19th century, if not before that. In a recent essay at the Daily Beast, David Ropkoff explains the role of the Supreme Court in that revolutionary political project. The history may look back at the period in which we are living and call it the Great Regression. It is a time in which on issue after issue we are seeking decades and sometimes centuries of progress reversed. Now, if the term regression feels too academic, we may just as easily call it the Great Leap Backwards. It continues at its current pace and may end up being known as the American Dark Ages, or worse, to borrow from another historical saga, the decline and fall of the United States. Do not call this band of reckless revisionists on the court conservatives, by the way. Nothing about what they are doing is conservative, nor should you call them strict constructionists or originalists. Their decisions disregard legal precedent, the spirit of the Constitution, and often craft citations for their decisions from a whole cloth. Now, these are huge regressions for American society, and the scariest part is that they are proof that the right wing's campaign to liberate social progress over the past 4 decades has thus far been scarily scarily successful. If they are not stopped at the polls, they may someday turn back the clock so far that we and the world wonder once again whether the United States is an ideal that can long survive. Um, Now, the world imagined by today's Republican Party and the larger neo-fascist movement is a world of rules and hierarchies. The white people rule over black and brown people. The white-wing Christians will rule over the other religious groups and non-believers, and men will rule over women. The rich and the money class will have total power over the poor. The working class and the middle class most likely all of those outside the top 5%. Now, the lesbians, the gay people, the gay men, the bisexuals, and trans people will virtually be erased from American society, and perhaps literally disappeared. Other marginalized groups, including people with disabilities and undocumented immigrants, will face a similar fate. The rights of property, the corporations, and guns will fully supersede those of the human beings, the natural world, and the commons. The democracy will exist democracy will exist in name only, and in practice will be what political scientists call competitive authoritarianism, or perhaps even an outright authoritarian state adapted to fit the mold of American exceptionalism. Now none of this none of this should be a surprise to anyone. None of this should be a fucking surprise to anyone. Republicans and conservatives have been publicly announcing and telegraphing their fucking plans to fucking end American democracy and to reject pluralism and human rights more broadly for decades. In their own fashion, they have been direct but not polite. They have told us what they would do, and then they have fucking done it, which is bad enough. Now, too many Americans, especially leading Democrats and the mainstream Democrats, along with the guardians of approved public discourse in the national media, have continued to tell themselves comforting lies. Republicans are exaggerating or being hyperbolic because we are all American, who have the same fundamental values. Those comforting lies were always cowardly, now they are just contemptible. In fact, the Republican fascists and their allies told us clearly who and what they were from the beginning. The question now becomes whether it is too fucking late for the majority of Americans to take them at their word for it, and use the precious time remaining to defend, preserve, and rebuild our democracy from back up. Now, if you like the video, you can give the video a like and subscribe to my channel, RBW King. You can also hit the notification bell so that you'll be notified when a new video comes out. And if you want to support my work even further, you can donate to my Patreon link, which you can find in the above section of YouTube. And for just a little as a few bucks a month, your donation can help go a long way, and thanks for listening.